Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on building product analytics at petabyte scale. I'm Priyanka, and I will be your host and moderator for this webinar. Before we start today's session, I would like to remind you of a few things. All attendees will be on listen-only mode. You can type in your questions anytime during the webinar in the Q&A window that's available on your screen, and we will address them at the end of the session. Let's begin with a quick overview of Hebo. Hebo is a no-code data pipeline platform that connects and loads your data that's lying across multiple source systems into a data warehouse of your choice, such as Redshift, BigQuery, Snowflake, and others. Hebo provides pre-built integrations with over 100 different data sources and also supports advanced data transformation. Hebo is currently used by thousands of data enthusiasts who are working across multiple verticals and who are based in over 40 different countries. For more information, you can check our website www.hebodata.com. I will now introduce you to our speaker for today's session. Mickey Alon is the founder and CTO of Gainsight PX, the product expert platform. He's a serial entrepreneur focused on designing, building, and launching innovative products that help drive business outcomes. Mickey co-authored Mastering Product-Led Growth, a book on building product-led growth strategy. Before joining Gainsight through the acquisition of Aptrinsic, Mickey was Global VP of Product Development at Marketo. He's also the CEO and co-founder of Insightera, a personalization and predictive analytics software which was acquired by Marketo in 2013. So let's begin this session. Thank you, Mickey, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here, and the virtual stage is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So I'm going to share my screen.
Yes.
If I may.
Yes. Yeah, you'll be able to share your screen now.
Okay. Thank you. Here we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk about building product analytics at petabyte scale. I'm going to share some of my experience. As mentioned here, I'm the CTO and founder of Gainsight PX. We are a product experience platform. We are combining product analytics and with in-app engagement and surveys in one platform. And we're going to talk about the challenges of building that type of platform. In today's agenda, we're going to talk about what is product analytics. This is a new flavor in the analytics space, and why it is being used by a data-driven organization. We're going to talk about product instrumentation at scale. We just heard about codeless data pipeline. We're going to speak about codeless instrumentation. Why is it coming and how can you benefit from it? And we're going to talk about turning insight into action in real time. How can you take the data that you're collecting and actually drive ROI out of that? How can you also marry real-time data with big data analytics? Because eventually all you're doing with data and the data is trying to take the action. So we're going to talk about that as well. And we're going to finish up with Q&A, and feel free to use the Q&A section on chat to ask any question during the deck, and I'll try to answer them by the end of the presentation. So starting with what is product analytics and why this is really being adopted rapidly by software service companies today. So let's dive in and start unfolding that. As companies become more customer-centric, the customer experience is taking center stage. And as we know, in the age of the customer, much of the customer experience is happening within the product. If you think about that, you're using products every day, using more than one, you're using through the mobile, through web, in B2C and B2B. We are focusing on the B2B area, and we're seeing how much or how many tools we are using today when we actually work with the company. So today, if you think about that, the brand of the company and what the company offers is kind of tied to the product, and the product experience influence that as well. We know how we are using Google and what the experience there, for example, or Amazon or other solutions. So the product is becoming really the experience. Most of the time we spend there, and that becomes the experience channel for company, and therefore there's growing demand to better understand the user experience and the customer journey, which is again mostly happening within the product you're delivering. So if we look at the traditional way and the product experience journey, in the traditionally most of the efforts and tools used to focus on the brand awareness and lead acquisition. So the reason that there's like a new flavor of analytics is just looking at deeper down the funnel, not just on the top of funnel, which you're going to find visitors and leads and trying to optimize. Today, the funnel is actually becoming very different. Due to the growth of the SaaS business and digital transformation, you want to have visibility of the customer lifecycle, and the product usage data, as you can see on the right side, encapsulate a leading indicator for your customer lifetime value. If you think about that, in the past, I would read about your solution online. Most of marketing and sales and paid media used analytics to optimize that part of the funnel. But now that you're offering a solution and you might offer a trial or freemium or product demos, you kind of start that journey there, and your funnel is turning upside down. When you're starting simple, you're showing what your solution is doing, and then the customer is getting more value as they adopt your solutions, and the customer is at the center. So they start generating data on their customer journey very early, but it basically, most of it is related to the way they use your product as opposed to just downloading your white paper. So that's an area of data that product analytics is focusing on. As soon as you're signing up to a product, you're starting to generate data, which is very meaningful and interesting for your business. And we're going to talk about that as well. Couple of quick examples of business KPIs that are influenced by data and usage. If you think about customer acquisition cost, how much does it cost you to acquire a customer? And now with the product, you're able to offer trial and freemium and even automate the first the first demos, which helps you reduce the amount of human resources or sales resources you apply with each customer before they are ready to buy. That helps you optimize your customer acquisition cost. The same way with growth, revenue retention, most businesses are trying to keep customers and upsell and cross-sell them. So the data in product analytics is kind of providing you the leading indicator that will influence this business KPI. If you look at the churn, for example, is totally directly related to product adoption. If customers are using your product and they use the most meaningful features, they're most likely to renew. So that data is important. And we're going to talk about how we can collect that data. Retention as well is key. If you're able to improve, prevent churn and increase retention and even expand, you're able to increase profitability. So from free trial, when you can optimize by just having a higher scale, getting customers faster to value, showing what your product do and optimizing that area, you can always continue to optimize throughout the sales cycle. And then eventually data kind of fuels the customer experience, and the customer experience again is happening within the product. So as cross-functional teams like marketing, sales, success, and product interact with customers, they need the product usage data to operate. And you can see that this chart, which represents the customer life cycle. So monitoring and optimize the trial experience, eliminating friction points. These are the use cases that you use usage data to optimize. Customer success, for example, will identify which customer are at risk throughout that cycles. Maybe they just started, but maybe down the road, if they're not using the depth and breadth of the system, they might be at risk. And which customer actually are targeted for cross-sell and upsell because they have verified outcomes with your products. And all of that is in your usage data. And this is why analytics and extracting that data is important for businesses. And current analytics and engagement tools in the market are kind of blind to the majority of the customer journey. Because in the past, again, it was mostly pre-acquisition, it was website, lead, paid media, and then there's a blind spot and you're trying to figure out stuff with some surveys, but you don't really get the full breadth of what's going on with your service. So let's talk about product instrumentation. How do we expose that data so we can analyze and take action on it, and what are the new ways to do it? So let's start with defining what is product instrumentation. For those of you who don't know what it means, product instrumentation refers to measurements and control of your product. The goal is to track your product features to better monitor user usage, functionality, including your front end and back end API. So we're basically trying to expose and track those features so you can get the data and visualize and take action upon that. Another instrumentation, the goal is to address non-functional aspects like performance, for example. So if your product sales and success wants that feature usage, your engineering will instrument also to see the non-functional aspect like performance of the page, how fast the report loads, for example, and any UI errors that might impact the user experience satisfaction or the SLA of your product. So this is product instrumentation. That's what helps generating that data for the analytics tools to start tracking so you can start taking action on them. The more modern way to instrument today is zero coding instrumentation. So modeling features, modules, using automatic algorithm is way more modern way to instrument your product. In the past, people would use hard-coded events and relying on long naming conventions to know, because eventually each product might have hundreds of features and modules. So we've seen relying on engineering resources to code them, to create meaningful names so you can kind of find and know which events you're looking at. But the new way to do it is actually using automation, which can model your product automatically, create this hierarchy for you. So it's extendable model. And so you're able to track and measure module level, for example, and feature level. The instrumentation in this way is enriching every user click with some context. When I click on a feature, there's actually a context behind that. And the instrumentation basically adds the page, the modules, the feature I am in, and then allow me eventually as data science just to have different granularity of data. So I might look at the module level, but I might do a deep dive into a specific individual event or feature. So the new way to do it is using machine learning algorithm that maps the entire depth of product. So you have visibility to all of the user interaction as opposed to only specific pages that you just manually or coded using code. So the no code is just giving you much wider blanket to just see exactly what's going on in your product and then seeing where the smoke is and then double clicking into that area as opposed to just stick to your hypothesis without seeing the full breadth of your solution. In some other extension, you can also go and there's actually a manual tagging strategy that allows you to just use UI indicators to tag a specific button. And usually, again, you want to have it algorithm based, and then for specific scenarios using UI tools, but you're not going to introduce code into your product. And you're going to be able to control the naming convention and have something extensible. So over time, you can continue to trust the data and just pick the right granularity that fits your use case. Let's talk about the element of scale. As I said before, I was leading the Marketo global development team, and we've built a petabyte scale solution. Back then, we were facing some challenges based on the data shape that we have, and And every couple of years, new solutions and new analytics is born and needs to deal with more and more data. If you look at the past, I would say even 20 years, data is just growing exponentially, and the tools need to cope with that scale. And time to process the data is also becoming critical. So let's talk about the challenges introduced by the element of scale. First, if you think about that, product analytics has more data dimensions. The classic web analytics addresses most of the anonymous visitors that are immutable and transient kind of entities. It's I would say easier to just provide that type of data because there's less data dimensions to the data, and once you put the data in, it's immutable. You're not changing the data ever. In the product world, we need to deal with changing user attribute. We are tracking accounts, we are tracking modules, features, and these are mutable actually entities, and this is where the challenge come in. In product analytics, we have way more data dimensions than in any other area, and when we built Gainsight PX as an analytics solution for product, we had to design it to deal with exponential growth, and in data dimensions it needs to deal with. So we did build a more sophisticated engine to be able to cope with changing user attribute. A user might be an admin and have different permissions, and an account might be silver moving to gold. So those type of changes in the data create a lot of challenges in a classic analytics, and this is where you need an extra capabilities to be able to deal with these dimensions, because this is the access pattern your customer expect. They want to see how many accounts from enterprise, for example, using specific set of features and modules. So think about how many data dimensions the system needs to analyze before they give an answer. So this is what we are dealing with, and this also creates exponential growth in data. Each click and all the enrichment create a lot of data that we need to store and then analyze. So data analytics pipeline, as mentioned here, is actually one of the elements that is important around data freshness. Data freshness is how long does it take the data to be processed and available to visual analysis. So from capturing that click, processing, enriching, feature, module, context, account, storing that, and then analyzing the UI, how fast can we do it? And I'm gonna actually share with you how are we measuring that, and some of how do we optimize for scale, because this is one of the biggest challenges today. While in the past, data freshness in systems like Google Analytics and other solutions was measured in hours, today the bar is quite high. And the expectation is to have it almost in real time. So people, when they want to log into your data, they actually expected to see it in seconds or near real time, as opposed to just looking at hours delay and just looking at the data later on, because the business reason behind it is the ability to increase customer responsiveness by reducing time to resolution, for example, or to debug something. You need the data immediately. You want to be very proactive, and you want to, for example, validate that your product instrumentation is working or your system is up and the SLA is met. So the data freshness is becoming a critical element when you measure and analyze a solution you're choosing. You want to look at how quickly do you see the data from the first interaction that you generated, how fast do they go through that capture, process, store, and analyze, so you can close the loop faster and translate that data to ROI. So in other words, the data freshness becomes a competitive advantage, if you will. So here at Gainsight, we rely on microservices as well. This is the architecture we use that allows us to dynamically scale and address exponential growth without compromising latency. So we use Kubernetes. We use a lot of different ways to quickly enrich the data, scale any component that needs to be scaled. just to make sure that our data pipeline is as fast and optimized as possible to give you the full set and rich data, and you'll be able to take action and visualize it. So I'm going to share with you some statistics on one of our data centers. We have multiple data centers. We use both Amazon and Google Cloud. And basically, just to give you a sense of scale when it comes to product usage data and all the enrichment you need to go and do, we're able today with our architecture to scale to multi-billions events per day across each of our data centers and close to 100,000 events per second. This is from one of our production area, actually a snapshot from 6 months ago. Now we even at a higher scale, but this is how the volume of data that we cope with, because every interaction the user creates and all the dimension need to store generate that volume. And we still want to maintain, while going with this throughput of many events, we still want to make sure that the SLA of data freshness is kept. And one of the ways to do it is with the auto scaling mechanism in place. So in many cases, you want to address peak loads and maintain the SLA and latency and data freshness. And you also want to optimize your costs. So one of the ways to do it is to use auto scaling. As soon as there's a peak time, or you're going to measure data freshness and latency, and you can optimize that with more horsepower to create faster data pipelines and push it faster through the wires as the peak time goes up. And if it goes down, you can actually relieve those resources and optimizing your costs, because eventually everything you do in processing and storage also costs you. And so this is one of the way we're using to optimize that resource versus cost versus value to the end user. There's another element that as product experience platform, one of the challenges is we want to take action. So low latency in-app campaign evaluation is one of the things we deliver as well. It's not just we track analytics and show you those reports and visualization and usage data. We also are able to close the loop and show the right in-app messaging and walk through a pop-up for a webinar, a survey. Those have to be exactly in the moment when people use the app. So we have to close the loop in milliseconds. So you can see here, for example, even though we're ingesting more than 100,000 transactions per second, we're still maintaining a 5 milliseconds evaluation for any type of in-app campaigns. Product managers or customer success or marketing will try to trigger with a system. So that's another dimension that a product experience platform that has all this big data is also addressing and helping you drive more value to that. And that is a good segue to how can you turn insights into action in real time. So let's talk about data-driven decisions and actionability and how data-driven organizations using data to run their business. And this is actually becoming, again, data is very powerful if you can act on it and you can make sense of it. So let's look at the world-class companies using data to drive their business growth. One of them one of the ways is delivering data-driven contextual guidance in real time. One of the ways to monetize data is using personalization that helps product teams accelerate time to value and increase feature awareness. So this becomes this walkthrough or videos inside the app helps customers quickly to understand well and how to use the platform in an automatic way to accelerate their time to value and feature awareness. What you need to do is use all the data that you ingested and turn it into a trigger event to show the right message to the right person in real time. So for example, in Adobe, they did map high value features and very specific segment of users, and then they're able to close the loop at the right moment for users to make sure that the right person sees the right set of advanced features to drive their user retention and increase user satisfaction, and again, reduce time to value, because eventually reducing time to value also means how fast can your customer learn about your platform. Another aspect of data analytics is actually user feedback. You can collect today more score, like for example, as soon as they use a feature, you can ask about the experience. You can ask about NPS, but you can also ask about specifically on the experience. Some apps do that today. If you're using even WhatsApp and others, as soon as the call is over, or maybe when the Zoom is over, sometimes you're going to get a survey to understand how was the quality. They're trying to measure and score the feature. It's not a way to add data dimension on top of usage. If you think about it, usage can show you that this feature is being used quite heavily, but maybe customers have to use it, but they're frustrated. Maybe there's lack of features, or maybe it just the quality was not good, but they just have to use it. So the data feedback from users is adding another dimension to your analytics, and something that we recommend doing to complete the full picture of your data set. Another use case is informed roadmap decisions. Data, in most of the product managers are trying to get more qualitative and quantitative data so they can drive and prioritize features, have more informed roadmap decisions. They need to identify friction points, for example. It's not enough just to launch features and continue to launch more features. If your customers are struggling in some area, you have to go back and optimize, and most features might be great for the first year, but then second year, your customers might require more modern way to do things. So you need to go back and see where are the friction points, where should I optimize my resources, where should I actually go back and invest, and where are the new features that are taking off and creating more stickiness. So I want to double down on them as well and increase their awareness to customers. So data about flow and looking at the and path analysis in those type of tactics allows you to pinpoint a friction point, for example. Now, when you do build the data and you get all this data into your company, I see more and more data-driven organization using dashboards with recency, frequency, and value drivers, trying to consolidate and make sure that the dashboard is meaningful. And dashboard in general, I would say, are designed for KPIs. These are key performance indicators. They are not used for causation. Once you see something goes red, this is where you need to dive in and slice the data further. But when you build a dashboard, make sure that you're choosing actionable metrics that your team understands and are empowered to address. And you can see that, you know, the frequency, monthly active users, days in a week, how many business days they use the product, how frequent are they, the value drivers, key features, top 5 features that this is exactly your bread and butter, and maybe some new features that you just released, those should be tracked. And then the sentiment, what are the score, how do they feel about those features, can provide you a fantastic dashboard you can hold your team accountable for. And it's very actionable. If something goes red, you can go and analyze and further ask users and just look at the data differently just to get those insights. And last aspect, and we'll finish with that and move to Q&A, is just the last area of data when we use scoring, and some of that might be a machine learning area. Is just monitoring customer health, which customer is most likely to renew, and the feed to that type of scoring is a combination of usage data, breadth and depth of usage. For example, is this account and these users using the right set of key features during their adoption, and then what is the user sentiment, how they feel about the product, for example, or services. And you can actually build a very extensible score model. Again, in scoring, you want to make sure that once something goes red, it's very actionable and clear what you should be doing. So for example, mapping those key value drivers in your product and building a score. So when you interact with a customer, you have something actionable to tell them, whether it's automatically done or when you're having a one-on-one discussion with the customer. This scorecard is a very powerful way. And when you apply machine learning, the score is getting smarter and smarter over time, because it can find similar account and similar conditions and just give you a more prediction as opposed to rule-based scoring. So with that, I'm going to finish. I just, as we mentioned in the opening, also I'm co-author of Mastering Product-Led Growth. It's a product-led strategy ebook you can download for free from our website. And that allows you to understand how data, business KPI, usage data can drive growth for your company. So feel free to download it. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you Priyanka for the webinar.
Thank you so much, Mickey. This was a really exciting and insightful presentation. Thank you so much for your time and for putting together this presentation deck. So thanks a lot for participating.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.